And conscious that we're heading towards the end of the programme, but it really has been excellent throughout this afternoon. We've learned a lot, and I think as other speakers in this final session have found out, you end up crossing off a whole lot of points on your own speaking points because they've already been made. But listen, thank you to everybody indeed at the European Movement, to Mary and the team, to this beautiful venue that we're in as well, and indeed Irish Business Enterprise for drawing attention to themselves as links here. So we're here in this great Irish city that it is, a twin of Dublin, where I'm from as well. So look, I remember well working on this Brexit referendum and in the year or two leading up to it, first of all trying to help David Cameron get a deal that he could sell, and then through the referendum preparing for both outcomes. And on the morning of the 24th of June 2016, there was a group of us from the Department of Foreign Affairs and from the Taoiseach's office joined together in the Taoiseach's office in Dublin, ready to respond. We had a large contingency plan, which Tom referred to earlier on, and larger statements and Q&A responding to an outcome in favour of Brexit. And then we had much shorter documents saying we look forward to helping implement this new agreement that David Cameron had secured, and we're all relieved and thank you very much, goodbye. Sadly, we never got to use that material, but what I clearly remember, and it was prepared in advance, and it was the government's messages that morning, which were simply this, that this is not the result we wanted. We respect the electorate's verdict. Now we have to work for a number of issues, and those issues were effectively no hard border in Ireland. That was number one. Then we said we want to continue the common travel area, which was discussed a little earlier on. And then we want the closest possible relationship between the UK and the EU if the UK has to leave it. And then finally, that Ireland would continue at the core of the European Union and indeed the Eurozone, at its very, very core, that we would be continuing as an EU member state no matter what. So strangely enough, close to 2 years on, those policy positions are exactly the same. All the way through, and we're going to stick with it right through to the end. Now, we have to work, unfortunately, on the assumption that Brexit will happen. That's still the trajectory right now. There's people in this room that will work and campaign to try and reverse that. And indeed, I just told you earlier on what our preferred outcome would have been back 2 years ago. But we have to work on the assumption that it will indeed happen. So, and I suppose our government's kind of position has been so helped by the opposition sitting across from them. It's not just the government's position, it's the entire Parliament's position, it's the major party of opposition's position, it's also Sinn Féin's position now, it's the Irish Labour Party's position. The entire Parliament is behind this, the entire Irish people are behind it. So that really, I suppose, hardens the resolve of the government to get the kind of right result here, conscious that an orderly Brexit is what we want. We don't want any other kind of Brexit if there is to be one. So when talking to Mary Gregory ahead of this, she said, talk a little bit about the Irish peace process now and in the near future, and a little bit about Ireland post-Brexit. So I might confine my couple of minutes just to those, just sort of complement some of the comments already made this afternoon. Deputy Brannock stole my line, the Good Friday Agreement is the only show in town. Those are the words written in front of me there, but that is a core message I'd have today. It is, I think, as we celebrated the 20th anniversary of the signing of the agreement, and next week the 20th anniversary of the referendum in the north and in the south, endorsed 71% in the north, 94% in the south, that we're not kind of sort of going, 20 years, that was great, there's peace now, all is well. What we're in fact saying is we are celebrating its continued indispensability. It is the only show in town, and indeed it provides a good template for the future. So the agreement is indeed, the Good Friday Agreement is indeed very much kind of under pressure from Brexit. But it is going to stay, that is our determination. It is an international agreement registered to the United Nations, adopted by referendum north and south, and all parties to these Brexit negotiations are committed to its continuation. I think we have to kind of separate out the noise of those commentators and individual MPs, just a minority of them, that are looking to chip away at it in pursuit of the one true Brexit. At its core, though, are words and issues referred to today, and very correctly referred to today, the core of identity, that ability to be British, Irish, or both, and something that's not too often said, also the ability not to be British and not to be Irish, and to opt for both, which more people are doing today. Those are absolutely critical to it, so nothing can be done to undermine those abilities, and that comes into the areas of rights that were discussed earlier on. There's the principle of power sharing. That's absolutely fundamental as well. The equality between the communities and their representatives. That is absolutely fundamental, and that is under its own pressures at the moment with the lack of an executive in Northern Ireland. And then there's the principle of consent and the possibility for unity by consent, and consent being at the core of that. So what it is, and I think it's been mentioned by many speakers here, is a process. What we have is a peace process, and there's so much still to be done. Others mentioned earlier on the slow progress with integrated education, the whole piece around reconciliation, legacy, housing, so many practical areas that need to be worked on and need an executive back in place to implement it. So the risks are there. Brexit is a risk for certain. Within it, the very border, the psychology of a border, the very reappearance of anything that resembles a border, or any obstacle to people doing business or crossing it or engaging with their friends or just simply living their daily lives, that brings back a border, and that's the issue we've been highlighting. Some people see it only in terms of trade. That's not what it is. So I think there's also been reference, absolutely, to the PSNI and the Irish Police, the Gardaí, and their warnings. They are the people to listen to. Absolutely right about that. And I've also heard about people who work in communities with loyalist communities who are saying we have to keep our structures and our resources in place in case dissident Republicans attack border posts. We may need to respond to that. That's the kind of spiral that is there. We're not overstating it, but I think we have to listen to those who are in charge of security. So I think where I want to approach a conclusion here before we maybe taking questions later on at the end, is the Good Friday Agreement has been amazing so far, but weirdly, those who put it together, there was a genius in it. They didn't know they were anticipating this Brexit scenario, but there are elements within it. There's a lot of flexibility and structures within it for the relationship we might have with the UK, north and south and east and west, post-Brexit. We need to basically engage politically through the British Irish Parliamentary Assembly, through the British Irish Council, British Irish Intergovernmental Conference. All of these structures are provided for in the agreement. There is flexibility for us to continue to work together. Senator Fian referred earlier on to the 26 meetings a day where Irish and British people work together. We need to keep that work together sector by sector. Not just in the foreign ministries or the finance ministries who talk to each other all the time anyway, or the Home Office and the Irish Department of Justice. It's across the board. That's going to be the challenge of the future. So the final comment I'd make is really about Ireland and the EU going onwards. We've lost a great partner, a great friend in the room. We have to go on without them. But 92%, I think as Tom said earlier on, in the latest survey by the European Movement Ireland, but conducted by a professional polling agency, say Ireland should stay in the EU. That's up from 86%, which was the figure after the UK referendum. So those voices for Irexit have not had any impact so far. We trade twice as much with the EU as we do with the UK, and we similar figure trade with the US compared to the UK. So we're diversifying more and more. We have to do that. It's an economic response. We're going to. But the friendship with the UK, the trading relationship, most Irish businesses, when they first export here. It's a comfortable place, speak the same language, similar legal structures. It will still be the destination people want to go to first. So we have so much to protect in that space. So I suppose, come back to the indispensability of the Good Friday Agreement, but I also think all of us in this room, in every part of the country, have a duty to keep the connection between Britain and Ireland, and that includes not just between London and Dublin or other capital centres. We've heard a great idea this evening about a Liverpool representation in Dublin. I'm going to take back the proposal from the Councillor about an Irish consulate here in Liverpool. Certainly we're thinking about expanding our representation across Britain, and other ideas around the twinning of Dublin and Liverpool and revitalising that. All of these things on the ground, people to people, we have to work at them in the years ahead. So hopefully those are a few thoughts to leave with you. Thank you.